1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, is proudly sponsored by The Terrace, the home of retro and fan culture sports merchandising. Check out their range of Forest merch by visiting theterracestore.com or visit them on social media.
The 1865 Match Report.
Welcome to the 1865 Match Report, where it finished Forest 3, Barnsley 0. And a comfortable scoreline in the end for Steve Cooper's Reds, and the perfect follow-up to the win against Derby on the weekend. 6 points in a matter of days, and Forest edge even closer to the Championship playoffs. Keinan Davis opened the scoring on 15 minutes with his first goal in a Forest shirt, dispossessing Andersen before slotting past the Barnsley goalkeeper. The second goal, a really well-worked goal, this. Ryan Yates getting on the end of Brennan Johnson's fantastic cross from the left-hand side. Initially started by a lovely ball out wide from the Jack Colback. After a lull in the game, certainly for the first 20 minutes or so of the second half, Forest picked it up again and found the third goal in the second period, orchestrated mainly by the brilliant running of Djed Spence down the right-hand side, battling past defenders, fending them off before rolling the ball inside for Brennan Johnson, who slotted it first time into the far corner to seal a comfortable and largely enjoyable victory for the Reds. I'm joined by Tom to run through the game. Tom, we'll start with the team news then for Forest. The change that was made from the Derby game saw Philip Zinkernagel returning to the side and starting in place of Max Lowe, who dropped to the bench. It looks like it was a 4-2-3-1 setup with Spence, Cook, McKenna and Colback as a back four, Yates and Garner through the middle, and just in front of them, Johnson, Grabban and Zinkernagel with Davis. Is that how you saw that one play out as well?
Yeah, it was. And I thought it was a bit, obviously, a completely different game compared to the one on Saturday against Derby. So, yeah, I think it was a matter of we knew Max Lowe probably wouldn't start in because of obviously he's been out with injury. So, I thought with Zinkernagel playing and how he finished the game against Derby, I thought he was going to be a shoo-in for tonight for obvious reasons. And that's how I saw it tonight with obviously Zinkernagel and Johnson on in the wide areas, then obviously Grabban and Davis up front with Grabban just dropping off Davis.
And Davis, he's made an impression since joining on loan from Villa. He's looked a lively presence, and he got his first Forest goal tonight. Well deserved as well, I think, based off his performances recently in a red shirt. Talk us through this one, because I think in the first 15 minutes, I wouldn't say that Forest were all over Barnsley, and this was probably the first chance they had, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games where you've had a really good result of the weekend, and Radio Nottingham mentioned this tonight, that come the midweek game, it's one of those where how Forest are going to play. In the first 15 minutes, not a lot's happened, but it was great tenacity by Keinan Davis to get away from Andersen. And as soon as he got into that area, it was just a match of he was going to score. You had no doubt about it. And since he's come through the door from Aston Villa, he's been brilliant, I thought, without getting the goals. I mean, his all-round displays have been pretty good, and he's just a different striker to Grabban. And and hopefully with the remaining months of the season, he's going to become a real asset for us.
Indeed, and hopefully we'll see more goals from him as well now that he has opened his accounts. Great to see him on the score sheet. So too, for the third time this season, Ryan Yates making almost like a Steve Hodge kind of run into the box, just perfectly timed to get on the end of a cross coming in. This was a really nice goal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I saw the build-up. Nice play by Colback to feed Johnson in, then obviously put it on a plate for Ryan Yates, who slid in. But I've had to see that on a replay because the guy in front of me, and I think he does listen to this podcast, Sam Phillips, put his arm up in front of me, so I didn't actually see the ball hit the back of the net. So it's like one of those people who you're watching something and he sits on the remote and obviously changes the television program. But yeah, I did see it in the on the highlights at half time and everything. And it was it was brilliantly worked goal. And Ryan Yates has been a bit unfortunate getting on the end of crosses and things, but not in the getting the goal, whatever. So yeah, he's had a decent couple of weeks at Ryan Yates and kept it up with a nice finish goal from good work from Brennan Johnson.
And from my vantage point, I did at least see Ryan Yates finish it off. So between us, we've got that goal covered. At that point, it felt as if Forest could go on and go and get 3 or 4, and they were really on top. But I would say at that point that the game really started to peter out for a while, and not a lot was happening. I mean, there was a point, certainly in the second half, where everybody in the stadium was watching the game, but not making any noise. You could almost hear a pin drop. And it did seem like the proceedings went a bit flat at that point.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Barnsley, and if any Barnsley fans do listen to this, they'll probably see where I'm coming from, but they've had problems with COVID with quite a few first teamers, so it was pretty much a patch upside and where the position is in the league. I thought the start of the game okay, but I think Forest's fitness and ball retention was going to be key tonight. And after the second goal going, it wasn't like a matter of we'll go and get the third, fourth, and hopefully fifth. And with that 20-minute spell, what you've mentioned, it didn't really come. And then as they tied, we did manage to get that third goal. And I think Steve Cooper mentioned on his post-match interview that there's more there. It was the performance was okay, but he was expecting a bit more. Certain players could have offered a bit more in terms of intensity, which you can see his point, but you don't want to be too critical of them because obviously they had a great display on Saturday. And having said that, I think the 2-1 win flattered Derby really, because if somebody says Forest won 4-0 on Saturday, you wouldn't begrudge them because they were that good. And then tonight, after watching Barnsley, you think that they were going to get 3 or 4. Well, they did get 3 goals, but you wanted them to get 4 or 5. But they did enough tonight. But I think there's still more to come from this Forest side.
I think Steve Cooper, he's a perfectionist, isn't he? So he will look at that 20-minute spell and feel a bit disappointed with it, because I suppose looking at the bigger picture, there's still games to come against teams who, with respect to Barnsley, are going to be at a much higher level than they were tonight. And thinking Blackburn and teams of that ilk, Bournemouth as well, who we still have to play. If we have a spell like that in a game against one of those sides, we could really be punished for it. So that complacency, I think, is something that we do need to guard against, particularly when you look at the games that we do have to come. But the third goal, eventually Forest did come out of the other side of that, and they got playing again, back on the front foot. And it wasn't long until the third goal came. And this one really was mainly down to Djed Spence and his industry and his drive down that right-hand side, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And he's been brilliant. Like I said about Keinan Davis, but Djed Spence, since he's come through the door from Middlesbrough, has been absolutely brilliant. And it was just another typical rampaging run by Djed Spence, and he's got power. But the good thing about him with his pace is that he knows when to slow down and obviously play players in, and his strength to get away from their left back Williams. It was brilliant, and then he put him on his backside and played Johnson in, and he just stroked into the corner. So yeah, he's had another brilliant game tonight, Djed Spence.
And so too, Brennan Johnson, he was a constant threat with his pace and his directness. I think in the last 4 or 5 games, you've really seen his contribution to the team increase. You think of the goal tonight, of course, he took that really well. But the assist where he's on the left-hand side rather than the right where he normally plays, the assist for Ryan Yates, he's down the left-hand side, but he puts across a fantastic ball that Yates comes onto and finishes. Derby, in the Derby game, of course, as well, he scored the winning goal and took that one beautifully. Millwall, another important moment where he's involved in carrying that ball forward at speed for the winning goal. the way that the Brennan is really coming on now, he's contributing in every game massively, isn't he? I'd argue that this is his most consistent spell in a Forest shirt so far.
Yeah, he's really flourished since the start of the season when he went on that rampaging run and played Lyle Taylor in for our first goal of the season against Coventry. And but in this spell, like you've said, he's been brilliant and he's been really consistent as well. And it's just a matter, he is getting better and better. I thought there's a couple of aspects to his game where Brennan Johnson will know he's got things to work on in terms of he went on a really good run. And if he just had a bit more composure, he could have really scored another goal. I think he just shanked it into the Trent end, unfortunately. And on another day, that could have gone in the back of the net. But no, in this recent run of form, he's been really consistent. And hopefully we can keep him beyond next Monday because he is a real asset in the side. And he's come on leaps and bounds since he's returned from his loan spell at Lincoln.
And he's probably added a good couple of £1 million onto his asking price in the last couple of games alone. So whether that might be enough to keep the likes of Brentford at bay remains to be seen. But I think we're all in agreement that if we do want to achieve something this season, then keeping hold of Brennan will play a massive part in that. There was also a chance for Steve Cook. He had a header which was well palmed away by the goalkeeper. Forest also could have had another. The introduction of Xande Silva coming off the bench. Now, depending on which sources you read, he has been linked with a move back to Aris Thessaloniki, where he had a spell last season. So I was a bit surprised to see him come off the bench tonight, but he caught the eye again, didn't he?
Yeah, he hit the post, and then he had, unfortunately for him, he didn't connect well, and he's put the ball over for that chance right at the end. But I don't think any moves really imminent because he wouldn't be in the squad, in case there's an injury or whatever. So I don't think anything is remotely close soon. But with the transfer window, anything can change within a good couple of hours or whatever. So he might have played his last game for Forest, but who knows? But I thought he had a bit of a positive impact when he come on.
And the shot as well, he struck it well. A bit unfortunate for it to hit the post as it did and bounce away. I think he's shown a liveliness in his game in the last couple of appearances under Cooper, which suggests that maybe he still has something to offer, certainly in the second half of the season. Another name that has been linked with a move away, and he wasn't in the squad tonight, was Lyle Taylor. Now, this one also came as a little bit of a surprise, but he wasn't included in the squad, according to Steve Cooper, as he is set for an imminent loan move. That's Sarah Clapson from the Evening Post who's tweeted that. No mention of where Taylor might well be heading, but it appears that he could be on his way out of Forest now in the transfer window, Tom.
Yeah, it's been a rumour for the last few weeks, and obviously with Jed Wallace hopefully coming in from Millwall, that seems to be like Lyle Taylor's been the bait in that move. So whether it's Millwall or another club, who knows? But Forest must have some players incoming, because even though he's not really had much of a chance in recent weeks since Keinan Davis come in, but it's kind of one of those. I know they both play tonight, Graben and Davis, but 9 times out of 10 we usually just play with the one man up front. And so I suggest that Lyle Taylor leaving, Forest must have somebody coming in, because I think it's too much of a risk. Even though he's not been playing, it's too much of a risk to start chasing the playoffs just with 2 strikers. So hopefully there's some movement in that one before the window closes on Monday.
Exactly, because if there is an injury, you're almost back to where you started before Keinan Davis joined. So, I'd be interested to see how things develop with that one. Now, coming into the game, one thing that was in the back of my mind, off the back of the Derby results, was not doing a Charlton, basically. So you remember when we played Leeds under Sabri in 2020, we pulled off a fantastic victory at the City Ground in front of a packed house, and it felt as if we were on the cusp of going on and really doing something that season. And then a few days later against Charlton, we make a couple of changes and we put in a diabolical performance, basically, and lose the game. And any of that momentum and that goodwill that came from the Leeds game was evaporated. I was worried that something similar might happen tonight. So I don't know if that's just years of watching Forest that's done that to me. But did you get a feeling yourself that something like that might have been on the cards?
I think it's definitely in Forest's makeup. I'm not being critical of this bunch of players, but over the last number of years, when you have a Saturday game then a Tuesday game, it is in Forest's DNA where they have a really good result on a Saturday, then cock it up on the Tuesday. But the most interesting point is Colin Farrell mentioned this to Steve Cooper, and Steve Cooper actually brought up the stat about playing Leeds a few years ago and then playing Charlton. And it's interesting that Steve Cooper wasn't even Forest manager then. So it's a really good psychological conversation to have in terms of, right, you've got your good win on the Saturday. Let's not undo it by losing against, no disrespect to Barnsley, but a lesser team in the Championship. And we made, even though Steve Cooper wanted a bit of a better performance tonight, he alluded to that. And I thought it was really interesting that he's setting these really high standards and going back over over the last few seasons of making sure we don't have a potential banana skin of a game. And I think that was really interesting. And then I think that's the first time, well, I know for definite it's the first time a manager's ever done that. Because in terms of managers don't really go over past regimes and things like that. So it was a really interesting point to pick up when obviously we've had two managers or whatever since Sabri left. So yeah, it was a really interesting piece from Steve Cooper tonight.
I was quite impressed with that, actually, because it shows a manager who has done his homework and is very aware of the club that he's managing. To pick up on moments like that didn't happen under his watch, but are almost, like you say, almost in the club DNA, and it's something they've got to try and shake off. I think for the manager to make reference to it, not to bring the players down and almost make them fearful of performing, but to do it as a, look, lads, this has happened to you before. You had a fantastic win. You then followed it up with a very poor performance and a poor result. Don't let that happen again.
Yeah.
Go out there and play your football. Play your game how you can.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of eradicating complacency because we demand, even though we've suffered a lot over the number of years, Forest fans are still a demanding fan base and they want the best. Saturday or whatever. And I think he's just from a managerial perspective, let's not let these fans down. We've got them on our side. We're winning football matches. We're winning football matches in a certain style and purpose. Let's not go back to square one. So I think it's really refreshing for Steve Cooper. And I think for definite, that's something what he's picked up rather than somebody telling him this is what's happening. He seems to come across as one of those managers who wants to keep finding out more and more about the club and how's its makeup is, etc. I thought it was a really good piece of research and of how we have been over the last few years.
And I think it's paid off, hasn't it, with the results and the performance, despite that flat period in the middle. Forest were good when they needed to be, got the goals and some really nice goals at that. And they've put away a team who were bottom of the table. And ultimately, if you do want to be in the mix come the end of the season for promotion, these are the games that you need to win and almost not make too much of a hassle in winning.
Yeah. And this season, it seems, like I says, I don't know where Forest are going to finish. I don't want to be too wishful in terms of we're going to get promotion or anything like that. But from where we was at the start of season 2 now, it's brilliant. But I think the massive factor, what Forest have overcome in recent weeks is we've gone to the likes of Millwall and beaten them where we rarely do beat them. We've beaten Barnsley on a cold Tuesday night at the City Ground. Earlier in the season, previous managers would have accepted a 1-1 draw against Barnsley. Steve Cooper thought, no, these are here for the taking. We're 1-3-1. the game against Bristol where Lyle Taylor's scored 2 in the last few minutes. It's just games like that where you look over a season, and if we're not successful this season, it's one of those compared to where it was. But if you look at certain games, we're winning games where we usually falter. So it's really refreshing that we are winning these games where we don't usually win.
Definitely. And before we wrap up with the game, we're now going to hear the Barnsley perspective on the match. And we're joined by Carlo from Barnsley podcast, Reds Report. Over to Carlo.
We know this match had to be played, and obviously for the initial date, we know that there were COVID issues in the Forest camp. For us, it was COVID, injuries, but it had to be played. We're already playing something like, 13 matches in 6 weeks or something silly like that, 2 a week, but it had to be done. And no matter who we play, we're just not very good at the moment. Lots of problems behind the scenes. Lots of problems on the pitch for all to see. So best that we just got it over and done with, really. We were shocking. Absolutely shocking. And people can say Woodrow didn't play and Morris didn't play. But when you've got 6 strikes to choose from, maybe, Morris, Woodrow have got a bit more pedigree. But people like, Devante Cole, Iseka, Adebayo, we're just not good enough. The problem for Barnsley is at the moment that it very much seems that the board is not investing, i.e. not bringing any players in because they're getting primed for League One. Huge issues behind the scene about the ground, and we've got 2 owner parties taking each other to court, and you can see it on the pitch. Our playing style is completely different than last season, and you can tell that it's just not going very well. Nobody really stands out. You could say that Gomez in the middle had a decent match. Well, he would, because he's an under-23 from Man City, and he knows he can go back at the end of the season. Forrest never had to get out of second gear. I sort of understand why Cooper maybe wasn't happy, because after the 2-0, I think he would have gone in, and it was clear to see how you can beat Barnsley, and it sort of stayed, got another goal. But let's be honest, 4 or 5 wouldn't look out of the ordinary, wouldn't it? Because you knew how to break us down, but it just felt at times that Forrest was taking, the foot off the paddle a little bit. And let's face it, you've got a very decent team. Grabbing, I think whoever he plays for, he always scores goals. Johnson, obviously, very impressive. And it's we can't get the basics right. You get somebody in midfield and gets the ball, loose passes, bad first touches, confidence is at an all-time low. And it was definitely the night to sell 27,000 tickets and do what you did, because it's good. It gets the confidence up in your players. And for Barnsley, this horrible run just continues. And let's face it, if you look at the table now, Barnsley, not even odds on relegation. We're going down to League One, and if nothing's done, you could slide down even further, but we'll see what happens. And I think Forest, you should be pushing for the playoffs, shouldn't you? But you need that consistency. If you think about where we were at the beginning of the season and you look at where we are now, it's just shocking, isn't it? Fulham scored more goals in, I think it was 2 weeks, than we have in the whole season, and that tells you really where the problem is. So well done on the 3 points. You didn't really have to work for it very hard, but yeah, huge problems at Barnsley, and it's not a good time to be a Reds fan.
Thanks, Carlo. And the result for Forest moves them just 1 point off the playoffs with 28 games played. Forest are on 43 points, 1 behind Huddersfield on 44, although Middlesbrough and Coventry below Forest do both have games in hand. But it's setting up to be an exciting end to the season, whatever happens. Next up for Forest, it's Cardiff away on Sunday afternoon. It's a place that typically we've not had the best record at. How are you feeling ahead of this one, Tom? Because they can be a tricky team to play against, can't they?
Yeah, I found that out earlier in the season, but that was under Chris Hughton, and we're a different kind of animal now. The last 2 visits, I don't think we've done too bad. I think we won 1-0 under Sabri just before the first lockdown. I think Thiago Silva scored in that game. And if memory serves me right, I think we won last year. Or did we get a 1-1? I can't remember. I'm sure James Garner scored in the game. I think it was around about the Easter time. So, I'm quietly confident we'll get something there, because the last time we went to Wales, we won 4-1, and I didn't think we was going to get anything there. And at the moment, I think Swansea are a better side than Cardiff. So, I'm quite confident that Forest will come away with something. I don't think they'll lose, but a draw or win, and I think it'll be a decent result and finishes off a great week for us.
And the last result at Cardiff, you're right, it was a 1-0 win at Cardiff last time out. Garner did get the goal. So it'd be nice for Forest to continue that record, that little run that they've got. And as an ex-Swansea manager, I'm sure Steve Cooper will be keen to put one over on Cardiff as well when we go down there. Thanks, Tom. And we will be back with you after the Cardiff game with our match reports. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the 1865 podcast to keep up to date with all of the latest match reports and events that are going on at Forest. Thanks again, and until next time, goodbye.